Okay, it is July 14th, and I have been gluing up some of these deck beams. Here's one I started earlier today. I kind of debated on how to do this. When I originally laid this out, set up this jig, I did like George had suggested, and I put every 6 inches I drilled a hole, 3/8 inch hole, and I had ready rod in there, and it was going to make clamps out of the ready rod. The only problem was and I made little blocks to go on top that would swivel and lock in place, and it was just, I could see it was just going to take forever to lay these up that way. Trying to tighten all those down with wrenches, and that was going to be a trip. So I decided to go with clamps, as you can see here. And George said, "Oh, you need about 50 clamps if you have to." Well, I've got about 50 clamps. I got more than 50 clamps. So I'm going ahead and just clamping these up. Initially, I get these, and I'm using just some heavy black plastic. I don't know, 6mm maybe black plastic, and the glue epoxy doesn't stick to it. And I'm using epoxy too. George said not to use epoxy, just to use a regular wood glue on this. You didn't need epoxy, and epoxy would be too messy. Well, and he said epoxy would set up too fast too, but I think George's information on epoxy in the book even was a little dated, and his use of it maybe was, historically a little dated too. Because the epoxy, I could see no way to glue up those pieces using wood glue. That wood glue would have dried before I came anywhere close to getting 6 pieces on. And I'm actually only doing 3 at a time. I'm doing 6 layers here. This is the wood that Bill and I ripped and then recut or resawed and then planed. And George said his current 50 footer he was using 5 layers of 3/4 inch. I'm doing 6 layers here. When I had to plane these, it brought them down under 3/4 inch, of course. The resawing and then the planing brought them down under 3/4 inch. So I'm doing 6 layers. I'm doing 3 at a time because I was just a little worried, even with the epoxy, that it was going to take too long. The epoxy for me sets up slower than wood glue does. So I figured do three layers at a time, let it set for 24 hours, come back and pull the clamps off and do 3 more layers. Of course, I do a sanding on top to make sure any glue that's come up or extruded, like there through knot holes. You get these cute little ribbons coming up through the knot holes. But anyway, so I've been doing these. I center them on here, and then I do drive a nail through to hold them in place in the center. Then I start clamping from the middle there, working evenly in each direction. And then I put these clamps to keep the wood in alignment. If there's any twisting or whatever, you need to keep them in alignment too. And the first one I did, I was a little curious as to how well this whole thing was going to work, and I had the stack a little uneven, and so I just made my 2.5 inch width after I had run them through the planer to get each outside edge smoothed up. And I was wondering if that was going to work. Maybe I should lay the thing flat, put a 2x up there. I think I mentioned that in my last video. Put a 2x up there and then lay them down and stack them that way. But I decided if I just took my time, was a little bit more careful, and put adequate clamps in here to hold these boards in alignment, that'd be all right. And so far it's been working all right. Here's 3 of them done up already. I run them through the planer, 4 of them actually, if you count this short one. I run these through the planer to get the outside edges smoothed up. And they're pretty good. There's a few places that there might be some holes that need to be filled, knots that need to be filled, that sort of thing. And these are way too long. These are 16 footers, and the longest I'm going to need just a little over 14. So there's going to be about 1 foot of these ends cut off, so I'm not too worried about the very ends here if there's any defects or whatnot in there. And they're actually a little bit flat on the ends too, because I made my jig, 14 2 or whatever it was. And so this last part's in here is a little bit flat. But anyway, it seems to be working all right. You know, I don't have a lot of crown in here, but I want to be able to walk on the deck and function on the deck. And if you put too much crown on there, it just isn't going to happen. And with fiberglassing over the top, epoxy and fiberglassing on 3 layers of plywood and then epoxy and fiberglass, I shouldn't have any issues with rot or leakage or whatnot. I mean, the only place that's going to happen is around penetrations. I mean, I could have it flat and I think it would be all right. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. In other news, my fabricator did get started on my fuel tanks. Unfortunately, he's having back issues now, or he has been for a while, for a few weeks, I guess. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I was supposed to meet with him today, earlier today, or yesterday actually, it's after midnight. And he called and said he was going to the hospital and trying to get different sorts of treatment for his back. So I don't know how long that's going to slow things up, but hopefully he gets on the mend soon. My engine hasn't shipped yet either. It was supposed to ship out the end of June and I haven't heard from him, and it's a couple weeks into July now. So I don't know what's going on there. I have to contact them too. I made a little railing to go on my scaffold here to keep me from stepping off the back, or at least to help keep me from stepping off the back. Couldn't see buying one, or they wanted, $200 or whatever for a little railing to go up there. So I just got a couple pieces, short pieces of pipe and a 2x across there, and it'll work just perfectly well. Other than that, I don't think there's just a whole lot going on. Oh, I have been playing around back here a little bit. I've been trimming the angle down on these back here. I got like, 3 or 4 if you count the transom done, or more or less done. I got this angle cut in these to. And as I get more towards the center line here, it's going to get easier, of course, for a couple of reasons. One, it gets lower. The other one is it gets a lot flatter. There's going to be very little that needs to be taken off of a lot of these. But I really, really want to get my fuel tanks in so that I can get these last 4 frames put in and start putting build stringers and in the chine stringer on there. Really, really, really want to get doing that. I've been looking at, since I've been working on deck beams, I've been looking at the plans a little more closely, and if you look at the plans, oddly enough, it shows the deck surface. I don't know if you can see this, how well you can see this or not, but it shows the deck surface actually bowed in a little bit, both fore and aft, and I hadn't expected that. I had kind of expected that to be a straight line, across here and across here. So I don't know what I'm going to do there. I don't know why that would be bowed in just a little bit and bowed in just a little bit. I don't know why that would be. I don't know what the sense in that would be. You'd think if anything you'd want it the other way, crowned up just a little bit. I don't know. Maybe George had a crooked pencil when he drew these. I don't know. But even this line down here, the raised shear here is bowed down just a little bit. I suppose it is here too. Yeah. It's because I was planning on running a string across here, or a laser line or whatever, and putting my deck beams in on a straight line. I suppose I still could, but I don't know. I don't know what the reason for that was. Yeah, we'll have to see when I get up there too, and see where those frames end, at what elevation they end at, and see if they got a little bit of a bow to them or not. I don't know. It doesn't look to me like all of those tops of the frames, the race shear, are going to be exactly in the right place. Of course, I can fudge a little bit with the, with the deck beams up or down just a little bit. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Anyway, like I said, I don't really have any big update today. I haven't been doing just nearly as much as I'd like to be doing, but that's the way it goes sometimes, I guess.